everyone, my name is Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a book review for I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. So before I start this review, I definitely want to go first into the trigger warnings. So this book is very heavy and very dark. That's like the first and foremost thing I will say about it. So when we're talking about some of the things that I'd like to warn people about for this, I would definitely say eating disorders, very graphic on page. There's purging behaviors, restriction, things like that. Emotional abuse, there are a couple scenes of molestation, grief, alcoholism, grooming, and there's depictions of cancer and the progression of cancer eventually leading to death. So to say this book is heavy and can be difficult for some people to read is definitely an understatement. So we have a brief summary of this, and I'll try to talk about it without too much spoilers. So it pretty much follows Jennette's life and her relationship with her mother. This is a big theme throughout the book. It starts off with her mother in a comatose state and quickly establishes eating disorder behaviors when she's first talking about how she's 89 pounds and she thinks this is going to bring her mother out of the coma because it's a huge revelation. And it also shows a very complicated parental relationship. And then this book kind of moves on to the past before the mother was in a comatose state and moves on to her relationship with religion, acting, and just the roller coaster that was her life. So the next thing I kind of want to talk about is some themes. So there's a lot of interesting themes throughout this book. One of them is very obvious, and that's coming of age. It's just growing up, figuring out your life, going from childhood to adulthood, and all the things that come with that. There's also living for others versus living for yourself and trying to figure out that balance of how much you care for others but how much you also care for yourself, and what it means to have some independence and what codependency is. And all these kinds of themes are explored throughout her relationship with her mother, relationship with boyfriends, with her grandparents, all over the place. Then there's also some themes of recovery. So when I was talking about her issues with eating disorders, and there's also some alcoholism, there's some very heavy themes around slipping and sliding. And when she's talking about this, she's talking about slips where it's a small thing that will happen, and then slides where you go completely off the rocker, so to say. And the last theme, which I feel is a very interesting one for this book, and that's complicated grief. So when we're talking about complicated grief, what I mean by this is that we have this idea that when people pass away, you have to say good things about them, that you can't speak ill of the dead. And I think that Jennette McCurdy definitely throws that idea out the window. She definitely showed her relationship with her mother in a way that wasn't amazing, just because it was what really happened. She didn't try to sugarcoat anything. And it was really interesting going from that progression from childhood where you kind of idolize your parents, and then going on into adulthood, and when her mother eventually passes away, kind of her relationship going from, okay, this is like the best person in the entire world and I love her and I have to do everything to make her happy, and then moving on to, you know, she wasn't a great person, but she had a lot of flaws, but she had some great stuff about her too. Next thing I want to move on to is I have a quote that kind of encapsulates this book perfectly. And it's actually a scene near the beginning. And it has to do with Jennette going to a dance class that her mother put her into because she had to be more of a well-rounded actor. And it very much shows the complexities of the relationship that they had and what it meant to Jennette and also what it meant to her mother. So, maybe it's because she didn't want to be a dancer growing up. She wanted to be an actress. And maybe mom only sits in on being the thing she wanted to be. So, this one's kind of heavy because we're talking about how, like, there's a lot of implications in this quote, is what I mean. So, we find out throughout the book that Jennette never wanted to be an actress. She actually wanted to be a writer. And we find out that her mother actually wanted to be an actress, and it just never happened with her growing up. And we find that if Jeanette's not doing the thing that's pleasing her mother, which is acting, that there's no point. She doesn't quite care what Jeanette's doing if it doesn't please her. Then I want to go on to a couple things that I liked and things that I didn't particularly like. So one of the things that I really liked was the raw intensity of the writing and storytelling. So she was very, very honest in this book, which you don't always see. You see sometimes people in their memoirs try to sugarcoat things, try to make things look better than they were. And I don't think Jeanette does that at all. Like, if you read this book, you can definitely see how completely and utterly honest it is. Next, something that I really appreciated and I also don't see too much is the depictions and descriptions of mental illness not being romanticized. So there is a couple scenes where she's with a boyfriend named Steven and he deals with schizophrenia, and they don't know this at the time when he's dealing with some symptoms that aren't so great. And it's not showing that he's, this amazing enlightened person, or that he's, it's just dramatic and beautiful. It's just shown exactly how it is. And I think that's really incredible. And also the depictions of eating disorders throughout it. I think they're romanticized a bit in the beginning, not because I think she wanted to romanticize it, but more because she was a child and she didn't understand what was happening with it. She just understood it from her mother's perspective, and her mother definitely tried to make it seem like this wonderful, amazing thing that you do to succeed in life. And the last thing I really liked is kind of what I was discussing there, is the progression of her relationship with her mother. So it started off very innocent and sweet, and she didn't know that anything was wrong with the relationship. She just idolized her mother and everything about her. And something that kept coming up is how close she was to her mother compared to everyone else. She didn't really have friends. She didn't have much of a close relationship with her father or her grandparents. And her mother didn't have relationships with anyone either. She was very, very close to Jeanette, and she was the entire focus of her world, which is concerning when you read it as an adult, but it's not something that Jeanette would have seen as a child, right? And then there's a couple things I didn't particularly like. I think I understand why they were done this way, but I didn't like it, if that makes sense. So there's very graphic depictions of purging and restriction, both eating disorder behaviors, and they were definitely on page and very descriptive and very intense. I don't want to go into it too much just because it's very, very intense, and if you read it, you kind of understand that this is, wow. I don't even have quite the words for it. It's just very, very intense. And the other thing that I didn't particularly like is there wasn't much focus on the accusations from Nickelodeon, from the creator. I don't even remember what his name is. She just calls him the creator throughout the book. And I don't really know or understand what he did. I guess I could read up on it. But what I did find interesting that she did mention throughout the book was that she was offered $300,000 in hush money. And her first immediate thought was, no, I'm not taking that. And I was like, go Jeanette. It was amazing. And then her having those thoughts that, I could have really used the money, and is it a big deal anyway, and all this kind of stuff, right? It was just very human, the way she depicted this, right? So overall, throughout this intense book, I definitely gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I think the storytelling was very incredible, the writing was very well done, and like I said, if you're going to go into this book, do be aware of the trigger warnings, which I think I went through pretty well throughout this review. So the last thing I wanted to say at the end of this review is that I plan to come back with more videos. I know it has been a while. I definitely want to get back into doing more review videos, maybe some vlogs. Let me know down below, first of all, what you thought of this book if you read it, if you do plan on reading it, and what kind of videos you would like to see from me, because I haven't been posting much in the past year, but this is something I want to definitely get back into, and I definitely want to know where people's interests lie. You know what I mean? So yeah. Okay, thank you very much for watching.